Good evening. Welcome to the Human Rights Commission regular meeting agenda. Today is Tuesday, November the 12th, 2024. It's 5:32 p.m. And I'd like to call this meeting to order. Can we please do roll call?
Right. Chair Loyola,
Present.
Vice Chair Vignolo,
I am present.
Member Rinke,
Present.
Member Greer.
Present.
Let the record reflect that Commissioners Cleary, Horn, and Remus are not present, and Remus is in an excused absence.
Okay. So we do not have quorum.
That is correct. There is no quorum.
Okay. In the absence of quorum, we cannot take anything for a vote. And so that's an important thing. We'll still have a discussion on the item in the agenda, and we'll have public testimony, but there's no possibility for us to take any vote. And therefore, item number 4 in the agenda, which is the acceptance of the agenda, will be skipped. And also item number 5, which is approval of the minutes. We can vote. So welcome to this meeting, a very, very important meeting. We're getting close to the end of the year, and we have some very important things to consider in light of where the commission is going to be heading and our recommendations provided to City Council. And so when we get to the discussion item number 9, I would encourage commissioners present to really engage with this and provide your thoughts. And that is my welcome. Welcome everyone to this meeting. And we're going to move on to section number 7, public comments. And this is going to be, we have 2 people lined up for public comments. And this time it's been set aside for members of the public to address the Human Rights Commission on agenda items and items of general interest within the subject matter jurisdiction of the Commission. Although the Commission values your comments pursuant to the Brown Act, it generally cannot take any action on items not listed on or posted on the agenda. Each presenter will be given 3 minutes assigned for each speaker. Okay? And we have, first speaker would be Dr. Jonathan Lorenzo Yorba. Welcome, Doctor. Yes, we have people.
Good evening, Commissioners. I'm Jonathan Lorenzo Yorba. I'm here on behalf of Mike Thompson, who's the CEO of the Center. He asked me to thank you for the work you're doing to promote and protect the diversity of our community. The Center submitted a Measure J community-initiated project grant application for a project that is in alignment with the City of Palm Springs strategic plan and with Measure J funding, and that will positively impact the 60,000 plus residents and visitors who use the Center's services and programs. Our Human Services project will improve inclusion and accessibility, downtown enhancement, health services, emergency services, sustainability, conservation, and the economy. The Center's project will accomplish 4 things. Number 1, it'll provide solar-covered shelter from sweltering heat for currently uncovered parking spots in front of the Center, and 2 of these spots are designated for disabled drivers. Number 2, it will provide shelter over the long 90-foot walkway from the parking spots to the elevator. 3, it will provide a solar-covered rideshare shelter with seating for people who use Uber, Lyft, taxis, and other modes of transportation. And finally, 4, it will provide 9 new rainbow-colored bike racks that will be shaded from sun, wind, and rain. All people deserve a safe environment. This includes safety from unbearably hot weather. A healthy environment is clearly a prerequisite for the enjoyment of all other human rights, according to Chiara Liguori of Amnesty International. The benefits to our project are many. First, visitors to the Center will now have themselves and their cars protected from the summer's scorching heat. The bike racks will encourage bicycling, which will have an effect of helping to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. And the dollar savings the Center will realize by having a renewable source of energy will enable the Center to redesignate cost-prohibitive electric bill payments to essential funding for our community, food distribution, behavioral health, counseling services, and youth, adults, and senior enrichment programs for all Palm Springs residents and visitors, as everyone is welcome to the center. I've spoken before the Sustainability Commission and asked for a letter of support for the center's Measure J community-initiated project. I would like to close today by formally asking for a similar letter from you, the Human Rights Commission, if it is permissible, so that it arrives in time to be entered into the public record of the next Measure J Oversight Commission meeting. And I've provided our application for your consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Yorba, for your public testimony. While the commission at this moment cannot take on new business, I personally wish you much success with the application in Measure J. Thank you. Next up, we have Scott Nevins.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for having me here. My name is Scott Nevins. I am a Palm Springs resident, and I am hopefully the future commissioner to join this commission. I wanted to speak with you today about a letter that I emailed all of you this morning with a sober warning about what is being proposed today. I do want to preface this by saying I appreciate that we are looking into a greater development of the Human Rights Commission. What I'm afraid of is that we are also looking at the castration of the Human Rights Commission and the total obliteration of the Human Rights Commission. So what I mean by that is, what was presented was that we should be doing sort of social work. Great concept, right? There are many people in this city that could use connections to resources, and we could be that thread. Unfortunately, the idea is to basically replace the HRC with that idea, and I think that is where we are making a mistake. What that could be is an addition to the Human Rights Commission. We could strengthen this commission in a time that we are now 1 week from the election of Donald Trump. We know what is coming down the pike. We know that there are people in our community who are terrified of what is going to happen to their human rights. This is where we have such an opportunity to meet the moment in this city. This is not the opportunity to say, let's just stop. Now, I will say, sometimes there's an idea that things are outdated or that there's other groups to take care of the issue. That is no longer going to be true. And I don't want to be alarmist or try to scare people. What I'm saying is, it is going to be left to the local level to really help people with civil rights issues and human rights issues. And we have communities with women, people of color, children, elderly, retirees, obviously LGBTQ plus citizens. And I think it's important that we get ahead of this. And my other big point, as somebody, you may not know this, I've worked in television for over 25 years as an on-air correspondent for places like CNN, CNN International, HLN, and other local news channels. And I will tell you that this story, if we were to get rid of the Human Rights Commission 1 week after Trump's election, would be catnip for media across the country and around the globe. As a city that proclaims to be a leader in inclusivity, if we were to do that, it would be a disaster. And I happen to think Amy Blaisdell does a fabulous job, and I really don't want to place that on her lap and give her more work to do, to have to battle a huge scandal, another scandal for the city that could end up being a mess. I think that we are here with the best intentions. This proposal is the best intention. My suggestion is take this proposal, put it in as part of the Human Rights Commission. This is the time to strengthen this commission, not weaken it. We have to take a stand and say, this is Palm Springs, we protect our residents, we are now here, and by adding this addition, we've now grown. We could do things like studying Project 2025 so that we can see if we have any laws on our books that actually are discriminatory, that we could probably get those off before. We could get in front of the issue instead of trying to catch up later. So I beg you to not put forth this proposal. Instead, include it as a part of expanding our great Human Rights Commission. And thank you for the work that you do. I know many people don't tell you, but they appreciate it.
Thank you, Scott, for your public testimony. So we're going to move on to item number 9, which is our discussion
Chair
of
Loyola,
report.
we actually have 2 members.
Oh, do we have
of
2
the
more
public
members?
Online that we will
Comment
invite
online?
in. So the
All
first
right.
that I will invite in
Okay,
is,
so I'm looking at the order. It looks like
Yeah, we have
Philip
Philip
Hodges
Hodges.
is going to go first.
so let me bring him in there. There we go.
Thank you. Can
Go
you
ahead,
hear
Philip.
me? Can you hear me in the room?
Yep.
Great. Well, thank you. Commissioners, I can see that your numbers are dwindling, and I'm not surprised given how you've been treated through this process, but I want to thank you for your commitment to human rights in our city, and it's never been more important than now. Many of us have seen, as Scott said, Grace and Jeffrey's proposal, and I think there's a consensus that it is tone deaf at a time when defending human rights has never been more critical. So I don't know if Jeffrey and Grace are in the room, we cannot see, but we're hoping for a different kind of conversation tonight. One in which you proactively discuss how to expand the HRC's remit to protect our rights in this new era. What we don't want is what we've had before, which is this usual discussion of how to kneecap this commission in order to avenge council member Holstage's personal vendettas. That needs to stop right now. So if Jeffrey and Grace are there, I hope they can meet the moment. You still have not heard them explain why you are prevented from taking on new business. If they're there, ask them. Like, at a time when we need human rights protection more than ever. If you like, I can give you a straightforward way to end it. The council's June 13th vote to block the HRC from taking on new business is likely invalid. On that date, Councilmember Grace Garner improperly led a closed session discussion opposing Human Rights Commission nominee Scott Nevins, using personal and emotionally manipulative arguments to do so. This conversation was held in clear violation of the Brown Act. Council members, city staff, and the city attorney were all present. None stopped this illegal discussion. Several have confirmed it happened. None have denied it. To date, nothing appears to have been done about this, despite the city knowing about it and knowing that the public knows about it. It was also brought up at public comment at your last meeting. So I respectfully ask for an update on this matter. Given this clear breach of open meeting laws, I will formally request a legal opinion from City Attorney Jeff Salinger on the legal validity of that June 13th vote. I believe it was not valid, and I will follow up with Jeff in writing. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hodges. And now we move on to Rich Weissman. Go ahead, Rich.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep.
Good. First of all, I do want to agree 100% with what's been said thus far. This does represent a public relations firestorm. I've been in the public relations business along with the data technology business for decades. And this is the kind of story that will take ground and truly, both in the LGBTQ community, in the mainstream media, and also in the right-wing media, become a serious story that Palm Springs, a week after a Trump win, decides to eliminate virtually the Human Rights Commission. This is a time for Human Rights Commission to be incredibly active and proactive, not to change its work. I also work with Mayor Bernstein and also with Wayne Olson of the Economic Development Division in heading up a group that will be working specifically on creating Palm Springs as a tech center. It's a tech initiative. It consists of multiple parts, including bringing large companies here, including being potentially an incubator, accelerator in the tech industry, certainly bringing tech education, both at the Palm Springs Unified School District and COD, College of the Desert, and also in terms of bringing serious capital, investors into our city in the area of technology. This is a wonderful initiative. And quite frankly, the elimination of the Human Rights Commission a week after the Trump election will hurt us in that initiative. So much of what we do is based on being a city that is tolerant and that upholds human rights, particularly, by the way, LGBTQ people. One of the interesting things about the tech industry, and you'll notice that most of the large tech centers are all centers in which there are large populations of LGBTQ people. And that's one of the advantages that our city has, is that it protects the rights of LGBTQ people and all other minorities. And we have to be firm in that narrative, and we cannot at this point now change that. That will hurt us, and we need to think of a bigger picture in terms of what the impact of that will be in other areas, in other efforts in which the city is engaged, such as in the tech initiative. There are implications, and we need to understand them. I urge you not to dismantle the HRC, to remain firm in our commitment to a Human Rights Commission, certainly update the charter if one wishes, be more inclusive of other activity, but do not eliminate this commission. That would make that would be a terrible thing to do, would send the wrong kind of message, would create a public relations firestorm, and for me on the tech side, on the tech committee, would certainly hurt us in terms of our ability to attract the kind of technology that we're talking about attracting through that economic development effort. So I do urge you. I hope that Grace and Jeff are present tonight to hear this, because that's an important message that they need to hear. Thank you.
Thank you, Rich, for your public testimony. Do we have anyone else online? Nope. Okay. So we're going to move on to the next item in the agenda, which is item number 9, and it is our opportunity to discuss the staff report and to bring our comments forward. So, commissioners, please, whoever wants to start the discussion.
Well, I'll go unless you have
Go
something,
ahead.
Mr. Chair. I have prepared remarks. I'll go to them in just one moment. I want to preface this by saying I am extremely disappointed that Mayor Bernstein and Councilmember Garner are not present this evening, since the only item on the agenda was a discussion of this draft staff report that is from them and I believe was written by our staff liaison, Jeremy Hammond, Deputy City Manager, but clearly the staff report is from the subcommittee, which is Mayor Bernstein and Councilmember Grace Garner, and they're not here this evening to hear our discussion. Perhaps they will listen to the video recording of tonight's discussion and proceed appropriately. So with that, I'll say this draft City Council staff report, which Jeremy prepared, provided a summary of feedback received by the subcommittee of the City Council regarding an update to the scope of the Human Rights Commission. Once again, I must express my extreme concerns with the direction that this commission and the subcommittee continue to take. When the current City Council decided on June 13th to pause the work of the Human Rights Commission and to delay any further appointments to fill its 2 vacancies, that action was taken in response to a request by Councilmember Holstage and was based on suggestions of possible violations of the Brown Act by current commissioners. I remind this commission and the public that no commissioners were ever contacted regarding these violations, and our commission had already taken actions to rectify any unintentional violations by its previous executive committee. At the May 23rd council meeting, Councilmember Holstage requested a code of conduct be applied to all members of boards, committees, and commissions, but then seemed to single out only this commission for a hiatus, during which it would be rebranded, now being called Reimagined, and its role, scope, and authority would be looked at. Unfortunately, in the background section of this draft staff report, it does not mention that this commission had already begun to look at ways its roles, responsibilities, and mission could be clarified, and how Chapter 2.45 of the Palm Springs Municipal Code could be updated. all of which would have been submitted to the city attorney and council for their review and approval. I'd like to commend my fellow Commissioner Rinke, who worked with me on starting that process until we were paused. In fact, several of the commissioners during these listening sessions that were held mentioned our work in this regard. This commission had also begun extensive work to draft recommendations for council's review and approval to strengthen and address the process for soliciting, vetting, and recommending individuals and organizations for future community service awards. Now, whether this program is retained or not, the fact that it is not mentioned at all in the draft staff report is, in my opinion, a significant omission. Although it is not a statutory requirement, I believe that any direction the City Council provides the city staff should address how this program should be administered, if at all. It seems to me that the draft staff report is flawed in suggesting that a reimagined Human Rights Commission should limit its work to assisting community members find existing services and grant opportunities, and participate in wellness fairs, parades, and other community events. The report makes no mention of work that would allow for the advocacy and expansion of basic human rights and dignity in public policy to ensure that our residents are free from prejudice, discrimination, and hate. Although a reimagined commission could certainly look at human services in the course of its work, without also looking at the promotion and expansion of human rights at a time when there is so much division, anger, and concern among Palm Springs residents, would be a disservice to the community, in my opinion. We can certainly engage with various social service providers and partners while also being a voice for human rights in our community. For example, one of the strategic initiatives for the City of West Hollywood's Human Services Commission is to support, and I quote, vulnerable community members through programs, policies, and coordinated strategies, end quote. Yet its program area also includes human rights. So should ours. The mission statement of the San Diego Human Relations Commission, which is cited in the draft staff report as a model for a reimagined Human Rights Commission in Palm Springs, includes responsibilities to conduct and promote activities that foster mutual respect and understanding, but also to protect basic human and civil rights. I would hope we would retain this function as well. As Mayor Pro Tem DeHart said last Friday in discussing many in our community's concerns over former President Donald Trump's reelection, and I quote, "We can regroup as a community and unite and support one another and be prepared to do what the LGBTQ community has been doing for decades, and that's fighting to keep rights that are basic human rights for all individuals." End quote. As I previously cautioned this commission, and given the current draft staff report, I believe it will certainly be mid-2025, if not even later, before a functioning Human Rights Commission is able to resume serving the community in any meaningful way. Any proposed changes to the Palm Springs Municipal Code, which are necessary, I totally agree, needs to be updated, will take months to be adopted, given that the process requires multiple readings before the council takes final action. I believe the city deserves better now.
Vice Chair Vignola, will you be able to email me a copy of that so I can include that in the record and?
Sure. I'll
So
send that
working
to
on
you
the staff
tonight or
report.
tomorrow morning.
Great.
Thank you.
Carlota or Beverly?
You're welcome.
I
go
have
ahead.
a comment. not nearly as well drafted as Commissioner Vignolo, but I'm reacting to some of the commentary we've heard about the proposal from the staff report, summarizing the discussion, the background, et cetera. And it seems like the basic function of the Human Rights Commission, that is advocating and proposing and representing human rights within the whole Palm Springs community, has been minimized. And I think that's what people are reacting to. Now, prior to the upheaval that we're experiencing, we were trying to define our role into what we should be doing, since some of the legal aspects of mediation, of hate crimes were being subsumed by law enforcement, as well as by the actual legal process, the actual mediation and through the legal process, or through litigation. So I want to say that maybe we should step back a little bit. I hate to see the translation of this document being "we're social services." I think we're kind of integrating what we see in other municipal codes and bylaws throughout Southern California. I think we're trying to transition to more of an active role, but at the same time maintaining a representation of supporting the LGBTQ plus community, not to mention our undocumented residents that might be transported back to Mexico. There's a lot of things that are going underway that has sort of maybe redefined or readjusted how we're looking at this. Yeah, so I think that sort of summarizes my input.
Thank you, Carlota.
Yes, I think I concur with both of my fellow commissioners. I think that it was our understanding as we were going through this process that the concept of social services was an expansion, not a replacement. I don't think that any of us felt that the basic focus on human rights should be subsumed into another entire focus. I think that they coexist very well. I think that we have a lot of vulnerable people in our community, and I think that our role, which I think actually, when I first joined this, I looked at one of the things that we had were all of these, all of these connections with different NGOs throughout the community. It seems to me we were doing that, we just didn't do it, and it was never documented as part of our responsibility. I believe that as we were talking about it, that really we were proposing that should be reactivated if it did exist in the past, and that we should incorporate that along with the human rights. But in no way should we back off from our human rights focus, making sure of our vulnerable and all of our community members are inclusive, our community is inclusive, and that we are being fair and legitimate throughout all of our practices. So I think what this does apparently is just change us entirely as these gentlemen have all kind of looked at it. And I think that is an incorrect move to be making at this particular time, or at any particular time. I don't think that it really matters. I think that Palm Springs is a model type of city, and I think that it requires that we have an active and a vibrant human rights commission that also does social service type of work. Perhaps the mediation is the area that we need to get rid of, because we don't have the talent to do that. We're not lawyers. No. We don't have the expertise. And that then could, when we replace that with more of the social service aspect. But I think that was all that we intended. I don't think we intended this type of a report to come back to us.
Yeah. Go ahead, Carlota.
Yeah, I have another point that I'd like to make that has to do with being a representative of human rights. So I had been navigating the homeless community, going to their various luncheon functions, Well in the Desert luncheons, and when I went there, I had my Human Rights Commission badge on, and people greeted me. They were glad to see me. There is a real function for being a representative in the community and being present that I don't think was well acknowledged or that we really discussed greatly in our discussion about how to, I want to say, not rearrange or redo, but how do we expand and improve our function?
I agree with that in terms of the community visibility as well. I think it is an important thing. I've noticed the same reaction you have had in being out in the community and people saying to me, "Oh, I'm really glad you're doing this now," because So I think it is very important that that is recognized as well, and certainly not as a social service, as a human rights. Yeah.
Yeah. So thank you very much, Commissioners. I definitely have had the opportunity to listen and to read and really think about what would be the strategic recommendation of this group for City Council, as the new City Council is also, getting together, as so to speak, right? And also remembering that all of us in working in commissions work at the direction of the council. And so to me, that's a very important component of the work that we must do moving forward, a really coordinated type of activity and work and planning and executing that has us very well connected to what the city's strategic plan is. And having said that, obviously, and heard commentary and read public testimony, I come to realize that we certainly should not recommend that the Human Rights Commission is shut down, but rather that a new HRC 2.0, whatever that might be, is it's looked into. Because it is true, we do have a very large community that has many vulnerable citizens. And while the focus of the work of this commission for years has been on advocating for LGBTQ, which is something that we should continue to do regardless, I also want us to be mindful that there are many other vulnerable communities that we haven't really worked very closely or looked into. And that obviously includes homelessness, but also homeless people, but also senior citizens and our youth, right? And immigrants and our immigrant community, who is such an incredible part of our life, right? So there's so many things that I think that a reimagined HRC 2.0 could be charged with regard to that, and then also really thinking about how can we integrate, fold into our work, the work that we do, making sure that all of these human services become available to our citizens. Because not having access to one of these services is also, it's a human right. And, as we learn to navigate through the many agencies that might already offer some of these services and other gaps that might be in our community that we don't know about, I think that's where the work of this group should kind of, look into. And that's what I would like to see happen. Working with our local non-for-profit and NGOs, it's also going to be very critical, because we need to take advantage of the work that some of these organizations are already doing, the funds that they're raising, right? We have organizations like Equality California and the Human Rights Campaign and many other organizations that are already doing a lot of the work. And as a commission, I think that from a strategy perspective, it makes so much sense for us to kind of get plugged into the work that these organizations are already doing. Because the goal is never to duplicate or to create things that someone else is doing already very well and for which they've already raised lots of funds, and then they have a, you know, a very strong arm of involvement in our communities, but rather to really learn about what the work of these organizations is, and then really think about how this commission could get involved in and continue to educate the public that some of those services and some of the access to resources that these organizations offer is there. We do have a language barrier in some instances, but we also, and I recognize this when I was thinking about the strategic work that was needed, we need to make sure that it's not just something that lives on a website. One of the functions of this particular working group was to educate. It's in our mission statement. And I think that education piece is ever so more important now. But we need to figure it out. How do we let the public know what's available? And help people connect the dots and act as a working group that is going to be out there. Because another part of it, of this puzzle, is that, so we are a working group, but not every commissioner is super involved in doing the work. In case in point, there's only 4 of us tonight here, right? So, you know, the commission really needs to have people that are going to roll up their sleeves and get out there, like Carlotta with the homelessness, and others with other types of work that is needed. So those are kind of my thoughts. I also want to thank everyone for participating and putting ideas forward, and also, you know, the staff for putting the report together. Obviously, we are having this discussion thinking, this is not entirely it yet. We're not there yet. We're not there yet. And so those are my thoughts. Okay, Carlota? David?
So I agree with the chair, and I just want to make clear a couple of points. One, I want to again thank Jeremy for preparing the draft staff report. I'm sure it was not easy, and I agree in principle with the recommendation of the staff report, which is clearly to get direction from the city council. But a lot of that direction, and for them to discuss and provide direction, is what it says, to staff, which presumably would be Jeremy. So in their discussion of this, I believe they're going to rely a lot on what they've heard from the public, I hope, what's in the staff analysis, which I'm not clear as how this will proceed, because now I don't know if Jeremy will have an opportunity to revise the draft before it's represented, or if we'll ever see it. I don't know yet, because they're not, the subcommittee's not here to weigh in. So
And perhaps I can chime in on that one to perhaps alleviate some concerns. But my plan this evening was to listen to everyone's comments, go back and then make a revision to the staff report, likely through an addendum that will incorporate everyone's concerns today, including public comment, to sort of summarize or synthesize, here's what I heard this evening, here's what's different from the council report that's before you. That will get submitted to the council, and they'll have all the information, both what's in the council report as well as what we're hearing today, to guide their conversation.
Yeah, and this conversation is going to take place at the next council meeting, is that correct?
There's a council meeting, the next council meeting is the 14th, and this will not be on that agenda. It will be on the 21st
On the 21st.
When does the new council go to
in
work?
December.
So that will be to the new council?
It will go to the existing council for the initial discussion, what the current council decides, if they want to then give direction, whether they want to say, let's have additional council members participate. I do not know the answer to that.
Timing is,
I agree with Jeremy. I think that the timeline, that's new information, that it's going to be placed on the agenda. A revised staff report will be placed on the agenda November 21st.
It will be the staff report you see before you with an addendum to it that explains the conversation and the comments that we received this evening.
Okay. So that council, the current council, will
That is correct.
Discuss.
and may provide direction back to city staff,
That's correct.
right? Which then ultimately what you do with that will at some point come back to the new city council because they'll be sworn in December 12th. So whether they take it up in January at their council meetings or some future date is to be determined.
That is correct. The new council will be involved at some point because the current council at their last meeting is going to give staff direction. I have to come back to council for multiple meetings, the introduction of an ordinance, the second
So
reading of an
in fact, then we
ordinance.
would have another go at the revised.
Correct.
With feedback from the current council
Correct.
before our next meeting,
I have
before our December meeting, and then it would go back to them in December.
That one's
No,
difficult
no,
for me
I
to
missed-
answer.
where did I miss? Okay.
Because at the November 21 meeting, they'll get the staff report that you're seeing the draft of now.
With the
What they
addendum.
choose to do with that, I don't know. So I don't know at the December meeting if I'll have any updates. They theoretically could punt it to a future meeting. They could give direction, let's wait for the next council. They could say, hey, I like the way it's presented, draft an ordinance. I am
Okay,
guessing at this
okay, I understand.
Go ahead, Carlotta. You need to open the mic.
Okay, so regarding the staff report, the staff analysis, I have an amendment that I'm suggesting, the staff analysis. So I think this is what people are reacting to. It's like the third bullet on the bottom. The commission should focus on human services rather than human rights. I think that language should be modified. The commission should focus on human services as well as human rights, and human rights. I think that triggered some of the commentary that we heard tonight. The other thing I wanted just to mention is that I think Scott Nevin's comment about getting ahead of Project 2025, if that indeed materializes, that could open up a whole new role of activity, and I think that should give the new city council impetus to act on the Human Rights Commission and get us back in action. Okay.
I've made notes. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeremy. I have one question, which is, we are entering public testimony into records, yes? And part of the addendum that's going to be prepared will also include the feedback that we got from public testimony today?
Yes, a word-for-word transcription, no,
No,
but a
no,
summary
but-
of the comments that we've
but the
received,
comments,
as well
the-
as the comments.
Okay.
And I'll certainly use Vice Chair Vignolo's written
Document.
statement that he'll give me to guide some of that narrative that I'll put together.
Okay.
One more question, just about the community center, the LGBT community center. They wanting a letter of support. We can't act on that because we don't have a quorum.
No, not
don't
only
have-
that, we
with new
cannot
business.
take on new businesses at the moment.
That's right, okay, all right. I'm sorry.
Otherwise, we would be drafting that letter. But we can't, unfortunately, Dr. Yoruba.
To Commissioner Inke's sort of great segue, I think I'll close my comments for tonight by urging commissioners to attend the city council meetings, because that will be an opportunity for us to provide them limited, because we'll be limited to 2 minutes, I believe, our thoughts about the revised staff report that will be put forward to them for consideration and discussion on November 21st. So I intend to be there. I urge all of my fellow commissioners to attend as well, because that will be an opportunity to comment to them as commissioners in public testimony on the revised staff report that Jeremy will be putting forward to the subcommittee, which I assume will see it. I assume the subcommittee will see the staff report before it goes to council on the 21st, since it's from them.
That is correct.
right? So,
Yeah. So I encourage everyone to really look for the agenda for that meeting and the packet of information, because the new report will be there.
and the other thing is, I just want to clarify, because there was talk in public testimony, if I heard correctly, this notion that what the staff report was suggesting that the Human Rights Commission be disbanded. And I don't really see that in the staff report. And I don't think that is the intent of the subcommittee. Now, whether the council decides to do that when it discusses and provides direction to staff report is a whole nother issue, which I think is why it's important for us to go to the November 21st meeting. But, I didn't sense that from Jeremy's draft staff report, either in the
I think-
analysis or anywhere in the documents.
No one has ever communicated to me to disband the HRC.
But I do believe, Jeremy and David, you both that it was not proposed, but I think it was discussed at the last meeting that it actually be renamed Human Services, which basically gets rid of the Human Rights
You
Commission.
know what that
And
is?
that's probably what they're reacting
It
to.
was that concept of the rebranding.
Yeah, and I think
And I
we
think that
actually
was-
talked about renaming the Human Services Commission. And I think
You know.
that would be a mistake, particularly at this point
I
in
think
time.
the concept of rebranding, which is, well, if it's well done in marketing, could serve, right? But this is not a rebranding exercise.
No, I think as I said earlier, and I just reiterate that I think, it was all of our idea was really to be additive, not to take away.
And one more comment too, rebranding came from the city council suggestion, I
Yeah.
believe. They used that term.
Yes, and that's what I think introduced this concept of closing, dismantling.
And I'd like to really thank, and I want to be on the record of thanking Jeremy for a document well done. Very difficult to incorporate these polar points of view. Thank you.
Certainly. Great work, Jeremy. Thank you so
Just
much.
I just thought of another thing. I just want to make sure that, again, as part of this discussion of the staff report, since we don't have a quorum, we can only discuss, I, again, would urge my fellow commissioners, those present and those not in attendance this evening, to also let the current city council, as well as the whoever's sworn in on December 12th to represent District 4 and District 5, know that, if you agree with me, that I think I hope the council will allow us to get back to some semblance of normal business while this process of reimagining or rebranding or updating the statute in the municipal code takes place. Because as I mentioned in my comments in discussing the staff report, the process of updating the municipal code is a lengthy one, and it will take a long time. If we are unable to do anything until that plays out, I believe it's a disservice. And so I urge my commissioners to think about that and let the council know, both the current council members and those two that will take the oath on December 12th, the importance of, we want to help continue to do the work that we were doing to the greatest extent that we're allowed to do it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, David. Any additional comments? Thank you so much for this discussion. Okay, having no more comments on this discussion, we're going to move to adjourn this meeting. And I will say that the commission will adjourn to a regular meeting scheduled on Monday, December the 9th, 2024. Thank you very much, everyone. Have a good night.
Thank you all.